Viralnater presents Bill Gates once said he won't leave any money to his children. Turns out, you already know who the man behind Microsoft is, but we'll do it anyway. In the 1980s and 1990s, Bill Gates changed the way people used personal computers, which made him famous all over the world and very rich. But there's a man who wears many hats behind the kind exterior. Bill is great at being a dad, a CEO, and a husband. But Gates seems to have a few dirty secrets too, just like most people. The biggest one is Apple Inc. Little Bill. William Henry Gates III was born on October 28, 1955 in Seattle, Washington. He'd go on to become Bill Gates. William H. Gates Sr. and Mary Maxwell had 3 children. Gates has a sister named Christiane, who is older than him, and a sister named Libby, who's younger. The 2 of them were both successful in their jobs and wanted their young son to grow up and follow his dreams. What they didn't know was that his hopes and dreams would go beyond their wildest dreams and would change our lives forever. Like a dad, like a son. Both of Gates' parents did well in their areas. Mary Maxwell, his mother, ran a business and ran a bank. From 1975 to 1993, she was on the Board of Regents at the University of Washington. William H. Gates Sr., Gates' father, was a lawyer. As an only child, Gates Sr. had high dreams for his son. He wanted him to become a famous lawyer like him. As a child, Gates looked up to his dad and wanted to do well so that his dad would be happy. But his life would go in a different direction. Making a deal. Young Gates always seemed to be good with computers, even when he was young. He loved messing around with technology and was always looking for fresh ways to make things and come up with new ideas. Gates wrote his first computer program when he was only 13. This shocked his parents and teachers. Gates was also part of a group that turned the school's salary records into computers when he was in high school. It also created Traf-O-Data, a tool that keeps track of traffic. Local governments bought this system, which is pretty cool for a high school project. Easy Coder. As a young engineer in high school, Gates wrote computer code for a program that made class schedules for all the kids. This is a funny story from his career. This worked out very well for the young Gates. As a teen, he wasn't known for being good at talking to girls, but he messed with the scheduling system to end up in a few classes with only girls. Gates laughed to the BBC. It wasn't like I could talk to them or anything, but of course they were there. Trying to break through. According to Gates, he was a pretty bad kid who didn't want to follow his parents' rules. "I caused some trouble," he said. "Right away, I started to wonder if their rules made sense and should always be followed. There was some tension there because I was pushing back, but by the time I was 14, I got over it, which is good because they were very supportive and I started to learn how to code and do other computer things." Best friends. There was one person Gates could always count on, his best friend Paul Allen. This was true even when he was a child and teen and fought against his parents' control. Allen was 2 years older than Gates, but that didn't stop them from becoming very close. Allen even wrote an essay about their bond when he was a student in high school. He wrote, "We fit together very well." How to stay focused. Gates and Allen were showing off their amazing computer programming skills to everyone around them. They were so inspired that they wanted to start their own business right after high school. Both of them were excited to go, but Gates' parents didn't want to. They didn't want their son to quit high school without a license. Even though they admired his drive, they told him to finish high school, go to college, and become a lawyer like his father. Big hopes. Gates did what his parents told him to do and went to Harvard University in Boston in 1973. He declared himself as a pre-law major, but he quickly changed his mind and became more interested in math and computers. Allen was working as a programmer for Honeywell near Boston, and the 2 of them kept working on their software. For the first time in history, Gates called MITS from his dorm room in 1975. The company hired him after he pitched the software idea he and Allen had come up with. Leaving school. During his time off from college, Gates worked with Allen to build PCs for MITS. A mini-computer ran an Altair emulator that they worked on together, and then they worked on the basic program for it. They chose the name Microsoft, which comes from the words microcomputer and software, for their business around this time. Gates never went back to Harvard because the project was so successful. Not like most people who drop out, though. He knew he was about to do something great. Going for a big thing. After that, Gates and Allen opened their own office in Albuquerque and started working together full-time. The dash was taken out of their business name, and Gates made Microsoft a brand. They got to work writing and rewriting different kinds of computer code to make new software. The rest of the computer world wasn't sure at first, but they knew they were onto something big. The skeptics. Gates and Allen's final goal was to make a personal computer that was so useful that everyone would have one in their home or at work. This was a pretty big request back in the 1970s, when home computers were pretty big, taking up a whole room. Along with that, they were very pricey, and only big companies and the government could afford them. The young developer's dream was laughed at by many, but they didn't listen and went on to make history. A huge success. It didn't take long for Microsoft to become known as an innovative company led by tough but focused thinkers. Gates and Allen moved their main office from Albuquerque to Bellevue, Washington in 1979. From there, the business took off quickly. In 1980, they sold IBM a license for one of their operating systems, MS-DOS. Gates and Allen were also very good at a lot of other things besides computers. It was very smart of them to keep the right to sell the system to other businesses. This meant they could keep taking over the world. A taste of the apple. At the same time, Gates and Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, were working on projects together. Microsoft and Apple both had visual systems that Gates looked at and decided that Apple's graphic display was easier for people to use. It was easier to understand than his MS-DOS, which was controlled by a keyboard, and it showed words and pictures together. Gates started making up even bigger plans for Microsoft after seeing how easy it was to use Apple's graphics-based display. Getting the Windows up. Once again, Gates would show how good he was at something else, selling. There was a while before Microsoft could offer the same thing to their customers, but he knew that people liked Apple's GUI more. Gates started a marketing effort to get people excited about a new Microsoft system that was still being worked on. He thought Windows would be a big hit. One thing was wrong, though. They weren't working on any system like that. Friends versus. In the world of computers, both Bill Gates and Steve Jobs became very famous. Many people thought they were in some kind of a rivalry because of how successful they were at the same time. They did compete with each other, but Gates admitted that they were friends. At one point, he told Rolling Stone, "Steve and I stayed in touch pretty well. We talked about our wives, life, and what technology had and had not done in a couple of good, long talks in the last year." The global empire. By 1983, Gates and Allen's homesprung business had grown all over the world. With offices in places like the UK and Japan, Microsoft could now reach people all over the world. Windows was running on more than 30% of all computers in the world at this point. Right at this point, when the company was doing well, Allen told everyone that he was leaving because he was having health problems. Startup Windows. In November 1985, almost 2 years after Gates first said that Windows would be made, the program finally came out. This was followed by Microsoft Office in 1989. This had programs like Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel. At the time, Microsoft Excel was especially groundbreaking because it was the first and only spreadsheet tool that let users change how their data looked. Over 1 billion people around the world use Windows and Microsoft Office every day. The year 1995. When Windows 95 came out in 1995, it was even more advanced software tools than the versions that came before it. Some parts of Windows 95, like the Start button and toolbar, changed the way users interact with Windows forever. A tech expert at the top study and advice firm Gartner, Neil McDonald, said, "If you look at Windows 95, it was a quantum leap in terms of technological capability and stability. People still think of Windows 95 as one of the best inventions of the 20th century." The end. After taking over the software world, Microsoft didn't seem like it could go any further. But that was before the famous Xbox came out in 2001. Xbox made a huge $11.4 billion around the world in 2019. A lot of people might think this is a huge amount, but it's less than 10% of all the money Microsoft makes. The end of an era. In the year 2000, Gates told everyone that he was leaving his job as CEO of Microsoft. He said that he would still be a top software engineer, but that Steve Ballmer would be taking over as CEO. Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer were good friends. They went to Harvard together and worked together at Microsoft for a long time. For Gates, it was the end of an age, but exciting new things were coming his way. Change more. Gates stayed at Microsoft as the chief software engineer for the next 8 years, giving important information about the multi-billion-dollar company. He stopped being CSA in 2008, but he stayed on the team as head of the Microsoft board. After that, in 2014, he quit that job too. He stayed on the board, but in a less visible role. He then became a technology expert. All of these changes over the years were partly caused by Gates' desire to focus on his personal life and have a more normal life with his family at home. Ethics at work. Gates made these small changes to his job at Microsoft over time to try to gradually lessen the amount of work he had to do. Gates became known as a very focused worker throughout his career, sometimes staying up all night and working 7 days a week. "I worked on the weekends," he told the BBC. He said, "I didn't believe in vacations." Gates worked hard and built one of the world's most successful software companies. Ring the wedding bells. In 1994, Gates married Melinda Nee French. The author, French, was also very good with computers. She has both an MBA and a bachelor's degree in computer science. It turns out they met at Microsoft, where French worked at the time. Gates said, "I was willing to say the job was the center of my life in my 20s and most of my 30s. That's why I wasn't going to marry anyone or have children. But I knew I wanted to do it someday, and she came along at just the right time. We fell in love." The next group of people. Bill and Melinda Gates have been married almost 30 years. Their strong and happy marriage is an example for all of us. Being in charge of one of the biggest companies in the world must be hard work, but they keep each other centered and calm. They have 3 kids together: Jennifer, born in 1996, Rory, born in 1999, and Phoebe, born in 2002. Their parents are so rich that their kids must have everything they want. But Bill and Melinda Gates make sure they have a normal life. Truth-telling. Gates has made it clear that he doesn't want his kids to grow up with so much money that they don't know how important it is to work for themselves and value money. In a Q&A with Reddit, Gates once said, "Leaving kids with huge amounts of money is not a favor to them." While Gates plans to leave his kids about $10 million each, might sound like massive amounts of money, to most people, when you consider that he's worth almost $100 billion, it sounds pretty small. Wish House. Even though Gates wants to keep his kids grounded, he's still raising them in a beautiful, famous home. What the Gates family calls Xanadu 2.0 is a huge farm in Medina, Washington that has a view of Lake Washington. The complex covers an amazing 66,000 square feet and has a lot of new technologies and building designs. It also has an eating room that's 1,000 square feet and a swimming pool that's 60 feet long and has music playing underwater. Marriage is important. But a marriage needs more than a multi-million-dollar housing development to stay happy. It doesn't matter how much money you have, a healthy, strong partnership always needs work. Part of the reason Gates chose to take on less work was so he could spend more time with his family and enjoy their life together. He told the BBC, "Yeah, I want to change my priorities, and we do take a lot of vacations. If I were in my 20s now, I'm sure I'd look at my plan and think it's very lame." Support your man. Being married to one of the most famous and well-known businessmen must not have been easy for Melinda Gates either. At times, the stress of being famous, having a lot to do, and having a lot of people rely on him must have been too much for him to handle. Even so, Gates' wife has been by his side through good times and bad. They've been married for almost 30 years. She wrote in her book, The Moment of Lift, that love is the most powerful and little-used way to make the world a better place. Love, for me, means trying to make other people happy. Giving to charity. That's also what Bill and Melinda Gates do in other parts of their lives besides their marriage. They both want to help other people and give back to the world with huge amounts of money and power. They started the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation together to help people all over the world, especially by making healthcare and schooling better. The foundation has paid for the education of 20,000 college students and put 47,000 computers in libraries across the United States. Bug the trip. Gates kept trying to make people's lives better all over the world in 2017. As part of the foundation, he went to Tanzania. He wrote in a piece for CNBC Africa that the foundation is working with GAIN, UNICEF, Johns Hopkins University, and other partners in Tanzania and other places to fight undernutrition in the country. It works with partners in over 45 African countries to fight poverty and make health better. Agriculture, kid health and nutrition, family planning, and banking services for the poor are some of the main areas where money's spent. Ted and Bill. Gates likes to give back in more than one way. He participates in many charitable projects and makes generous gifts. Gates has given many TED Talks over the years in which he has enthusiastically discussed many different topics. He's written about things like why giving away our wealth was the best thing we could have done, mosquitoes, malaria, and education, and how we need to handle the coronavirus pandemic. Gates was called a passionate techie and a shrewd businessman with his style of philanthropy and passion for innovation by TED. Looking ahead to the future. When we think about all the great things Bill Gates has done over the years, there's only one question: what's next? If he were someone else, you might think he just wants to relax, enjoy his wealth and success, and take a well-deserved break. We don't think Bill Gates will be able to rest anytime soon, though. We can all learn a lot from this computer genius, respected philanthropist, and family man, and he has no plans to stop. If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon